one of the countless billions of galaxies in the universe lies a medium-sized star, and one of its satellites, a green and insignificant planet, is now dead.
This is a show called Verse the World where we talk about interesting things. I'm Danny.
I'm Matt.
And I bombed the intro really hard today, but it's going to be a great episode. We have Zane Richter on. Talented musician and all-around philosophical dude. We're going to be talking to him today about different concepts of focus and how it can impact your life. But first, Matt, did you have anything you wanted to talk about up top?
Absolutely not. I am zoned in and focused on the topic today.
Okay, well, I'm not so focused, and the only thing I really wanted to talk about is right before the podcast, I just had a bomb poo. It was a good shit. I've been having a rough week, and I was like really exhausted today, but then I went, had this ultimate relieving shit, and now I'm just feeling great. I'm just ready to do the podcast.
All right. Wow. Great introduction. Do we want to get into the topic?
Yeah, I guess if we have no topics, let's do it. Zane, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, man. And thanks for having me here, guys. I've been playing saxophone for a while now. Trying not to associate with it too heavily. Just because you think of what do you do? Like, I mean, the thing that consumes the most of my time, I guess I'm a sitter. I'm an eater, a drinker, a pooper. But yeah, I'm really into music. Trying to make it work out for myself, and just been chipping away at it,
You've been working at some upcoming releases, haven't you? You're starting to put some stuff out there?
Yeah, so I have a few singles on my SoundCloud. I don't want to over push this right now, but
yeah, we'll
can
definitely
touch back on it.
Yeah, touch back on it,
Yeah,
and we'll have
maybe
you
at the
plug
end.
some stuff at the end.
Yeah, but definitely going into music and really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So what do you have? What's the topic today? What do you want to dive into?
And so I really want to talk about how a focus or a lack of focus can affect your personal health, your interpersonal relationships with friends and family, and even strangers. And I want to make a disclaimer too that I'm not perfect. I'm sure someone's going to see me after this, or will think of a time before this podcast where, I saw Zane out and he wasn't focused at all. He was daydreaming on his phone. And yes, I'm still human. I'm not perfect, but this is just some awesome insights that have been pointed out to me by some role models and some things I've observed myself. So,
What's kind of the base idea of the focus you're talking about? Like, how would you describe it as is it like a lifestyle almost that you're living?
definitely, yeah. It's I see so often, like, don't you interact with people who are, I'm having a woke day, or it's almost like a standoffish moment where they're trying to like prove that they're more woke than you, or they're more conscious and aware.
Yeah, constantly.
But when you're conscious of something, like I'm more conscious of my dog. I'm not trying to win a standoff with him, like my consciousness allows me to go to the store in preparation to pick up food for him, like it's a greater awareness like that, I feel, allows you to trap the problems in someone that you're looking out for who might have less focus in you.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a complex thing. It's not an everyday, every minute type of thing. I like to think of it as like taking a breath in, you're more focused on the task at hand. And then as you breathe out, maybe it's time for a nap, or you're just done with what you're doing for a minute.
Okay. Well, okay. So like with the example of running into somebody who's trying to like prove that they're woke, something that like, I think we discussed it on the pod a couple weeks ago. It might have been outside of it, but this thing where when someone's on social media and posting all the time, usually the thing that they're posting about constantly, they're not actually doing, or they're not actually applying internally. Like if you're really, I think what I had said was like, if you're really living your best life and you're being healthy and like you're like, oh, I'm taking care of myself right now and getting healthy, you're not posting about it constantly. You're not talking about it constantly. You're actually doing it. So is that like a similar concept to what you're talking about right now with like when you're really focused on something, you're just applying it. Like you're living that thing out.
That's definitely an aspect of it. Yeah. When you look at someone who's doing it, they're not talking about it constantly. It's one of those things where the more you vocalize it, it can kind of absolve you from actualizing it in your life. But I still think that it's important to vocalize these things. Otherwise, it almost gets swept under the rug and no one becomes aware of the benefits. You know, I feel like some of my best teachers have been people who just beat things into the dirt until I finally reached a realization where, with that echoing around in the back of my head, I was able to actualize it, ground it in something that I had experienced. And it becomes more relatable at that point. But without having that annoying person, like the bee in your bonnet, it's a phrase that's telling you and keeping it in the back of your head. Without that, I feel like I wouldn't have realized those lessons. But with social media too, I feel like it's robbing our ability to have that sustained focus, to like see over the horizon, if you know what I mean, where something that may not be directly in sight or directly visible, it might be a little blurry from the distance you're at or the things you have to get through to get to it. It chops that away to where you almost you're looking down at your feet with a social media like Twitter. It's like looking at every step you take because the posts are so small. Whereas if you're looking down the road, you can see the finish line of the whole race, like reading a book. You know, you have that greater depth, and I feel like that gives me such a great context just to have that end goal in mind. You know,
right? Yeah. Well, and we've been talking about a couple of these concepts a lot, like at work and stuff. So has there been like a shift in your personal life where you've kind of went from being more distracted and more immediately focused, like you're talking about, like with social media and stuff? I would say that's like social media really makes you focused on the moment to moment, immediate what you're doing, and you completely lose track of any kind of medium to long-term plans. But it seems like from what I've been observing, like you've been, I don't know, maybe living more intentionally or something more recently, where you're trying to get more focused on the horizon.
Yeah, it's so difficult to say that I'm living more consciously. I feel like I'm just trying to shorten the duration of unconscious moments, you know, where it's I feel like it's more manageable to get rid of unneeded things than to try and like proactively do things that you need to do. It's like if you already have the time available, which we all do every day, you have the same amount of time, and you just eliminate the things that are holding you back or distracting you, it becomes really easy to just do what you need to do, and comfortably too, because you don't have all of these short, choppy, abrupt interruptions and distractions. At least for me, it becomes one of those things that you're almost hitting yourself in the head if you're not doing what you need to do after eliminating the distractions. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, sorry, did you want to go?
Well, I was going to say, just maybe because we're being pretty vague so far, if you wanted to like dive into some specific examples or ideas of living a more focused life, and kind of, you know, so we can get a visualization of how you would act that out. Yeah. Thanks for keeping me on track there. So, for any listener out there who isn't aware, we're all working at a factory at the moment. It's an 8-hour shift, so it's not as terrible as some other situations I've seen friends and family in. But with that 8 hours of not grueling, but pretty intensive physical labor, you get home, you get tired. You're already tired when you get home. You just want to lay down, veg out, watch some TV, right? Yeah. You just want to reach for your favorite bag of chips or candy, click on some Trailer Park Boys and become Ricky, you know? Right, yeah. And just really, it's so easy to become a piece of meatloaf. And with this kind of job, it's there's so many moments throughout the day where I'll be jazzed up on caffeine and I'll think like, oh man, if I was at home, I'd really like to be doing this. Or I finally found the way that I could segue into finishing this project I've been working on for a while. And I'll just jot down a note
becomes really easy then when you get home to just open up the list and you already know what you need to do. And you really, I mean, after about 3 days of just slamming your face in the dirt, you start to value that time before work. And I personally have been trying to go to sleep as soon as I can after the shift, and then just, you know, get up, get in the sunlight, do what you got to do. Like for me, that's practicing my saxophone, trying to have tangible finished products, you know, like a new song, or I just memorized a new song, made something from scratch. And you get a whole lot more done that way. And it's so relaxed too, because you realize like, oh man, I'm still under the hammer in 2 hours. I got to go into work. I should really make this count.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so just to give a little extra context for people, on top of being a factory job, we're working second shift. And for people who like haven't worked second or third shift jobs, I was just talking to our mutual friend Talon about this today. Like it's kind of hard to grasp the change that it has to like your mind and the way you live, because you're off kilter with the sun, and you're kind of designed to follow the pattern of night and day. And the problem with that is like you get off work, like for our job, we get off work at midnight, and I'm sure we've all experienced this. You want to waste like several hours and then go to bed, but then you want to sleep all day. And then by the time you get up, you got to be at work in like 2 hours. You've had like no sun. You haven't like done anything. And then you can really easily get into a pattern where pretty much all you're doing is working and sleeping.
Oh yeah.
And you lose like that. Basically 8 hours of work. You only really need 8 hours of sleep. You should have 8 other hours to do something productive in the day. But being off track like that, you can really, all of a sudden, those whole 8 hours can be gone.
Slips away.
Yeah.
And another aspect of that time outside of work that you don't realize is valuable. Say that you like working with your hands and you're using some loud tools, or in my case, I'm doing music. I can appropriate that time outside of work, but only really before work, because with the proximity of other people who might be sleeping on a second shift like that, things don't work like you would think they would. Whether you think you have this much time, it really has to be that specific time in sync with the sun, like the rest of the world is.
Yeah. I find myself to be way more productive when I go to bed within an hour of getting home and get up at, like, if I can get to bed by 1 and get up at 9, I end up feeling like I have an entire day. I always end up getting more stuff done, as opposed to staying up late. Because there's the times you'll convince yourself in your head, like, oh, I can get off work and I can stay up all night and do everything then. It's like, not really. You end up like me, sitting in your bed playing Sims 4 for 5 hours. That's embarrassing on a couple different levels, but I didn't get anything done. And so I think that it is interesting, like, how that can actually affect just the hours, because it's not necessarily just because some people think you're lazy, you sleep in all day. If you work a second shift, you might still be getting 8 hours of sleep. It's just that you stayed up late. But it's so funny how unproductive, how less productive you are when the sun's down. Maybe there is some natural biology to that, where your body is in like a chill out kind of mode. You're supposed to be sleeping. You're not meant to be like doing a lot of activity. So
yeah, well, so like I've been trying to live a little bit more intentionally, like getting ready for the move to go to film school and stuff. I've been realizing like any opportunity I might have to learn something now rather than making a mistake when I'm there, like I should try and learn it now. Me and Zane were talking about this the other day. He pointed out at work, us all being kind of creative types, ideally at some point in our life, we want to be our own bosses. We want to be able to make money off of what we enjoy doing. And he pointed out to me, it's like, you gotta work for yourself as hard as someone else would work you at a job. And so like at our job, I've really been thinking about, okay, how do I utilize this to build like stamina and efficiency where I can work 8 hours a day flat out, no matter what I'm doing. So when I go do film school and stuff like that, putting that time into what I actually want to do.
Yeah. And
there's this whole thing like about focus that the job kind of helped me realize. Everybody says it, and like it's one of those things you hear your whole life, but you don't really get, is like everyone has basically the same amount of time. You make all these excuses and stuff for why you can't get anything done, but really it's just you got to get better at using your time. And I've noticed at work, it's like our job is not hard if you manage the time well. Like, you have to do a bunch of different tasks. Each night's like a new challenge, and you have to figure out all these things that you're doing. And I've realized if I go in and spend the first 2 hours checking everything that I need to do and getting on top of all of it, then I can start to pace myself to get a lot done over the first couple hours, where by the end of the night, it's not a mess trying to finish it and rush. And it's like, you have to take those concepts and apply it to anything in your life. Like, okay, I've only got 24 hours each day. I want to get my health in order. I also want to eat better. I also want to move towards some goals, some social goals or some career goals. It's like, you got to start figuring out how you're going to tackle each of those things to some small extent, like every single day.
And I feel like it's kind of heavy to lay that whole burden on yourself, where it's so much easier for me to focus on something if everyone around me is doing that thing, you know? Like I never even found that phrase, will you work as hard for yourself as someone will make you work for them, except for another influence of mine. My father got that from his father. And I'm sure he's heard it from someone outside the family, wherever the original source is. It's not really relevant, but having that kind of influence makes it easier for you to reevaluate. And then having peers at your own age, your own contemporaries, if you're all doing the same thing, like if you're part of a film crew or you're part of a band, you're in school, just in the band, in the orchestra, and you're all doing the same thing, appropriating that same time outside of class, work, whatever it is, it makes it lightens the burden of having to, man, everyone else is partying and just fucking off. Why can't I just party and be distracted, you know?
Yeah.
When everyone else is doing it, it's almost like it's like the team carry, where in the Marines, everyone carries that log. You're all running 5 miles. There's no got it, one person does it and everyone else can kind of take it easy. It's you're all holding the same load, you're all doing the same distance at the same time.
Yeah.
I find that's really alleviating.
It's always interesting, like, talking about some of these concepts. It's like, I don't want to get too off track here, so after this I'll just let you go back to whatever you want to hit next. But there's like these kind of ancient truths that just get passed along different ways, even work ethics and stuff. Like, I like reading Jordan Peterson's book. I was talking about the rules to my dad one day, and I was like, yeah, one that really helped me was the stand up straight with your shoulders back. Like, I really thought that physicality level was irrelevant how you held yourself. But then, like, after doing it for a year, realizing how much it changed my mindset towards approaching tasks and stuff. And my dad was like, oh yeah, my dad always used to say, when you got a hard job that needs to get done, complaining's not going to do anything. The only thing that's going to help is to square your shoulders and firm your jaw and just do it. And it's like these ideas that get regurgitated, and they're like religious ideas and they're psychological ideas and stuff. It's like all the answers are kind of there and you hear them your whole life, and then all of a sudden you get them at some point. You hear it a way that suddenly it impacts you. And like, that's the whole, like, you got to have friends who want the best for you, or like the whole Christian bad company corrupts. Yeah. Like those kind of ideas. It's like, regardless of where they come from, they are like, they're truisms. Like, the fact is, you're going to do better if you're surrounding yourself with other people who also, not necessarily like, oh, you go, I want to be efficient and I'm inefficient, so I'm going to hang out with efficient people. But at the very least, like, hang out with other people who are like, I want to get more efficient too. Like, how do we start, like, making our lives better?
Most definitely. Yeah. Having that team helps. And you can really reevaluate how you're using your technology. Instead of going on your laptop and looking up Trailer Park Boys on Netflix, maybe you there's something that
I think we know one of your vices.
Oh, I love
it.
Dude,
it's one of my vices.
I won't lie.
Love that show.
That's
when I want my brain
humor.
off, that show goes on.
You know someone on that show in real life. We've all met an archetype very similar. Yeah. But you can also go onto YouTube, and maybe the resistance to getting something done that you've rationalized is, oh, I just don't know how. Like, there's a walkthrough for anything on YouTube.
There's no excuse.
I didn't know anything about cars. I walked through my whole clutch replacement on my last Honda Civic, just YouTube walkthroughs. And it really, using the technology is another way to just make it easier on yourself. Standing up straight, you're making it easier on yourself. Opening up your windpipes, you know, you're not wearing out your back hunched over. It really is, again, about eliminating the things that are the resistance that's making it harder than it has to be.
Yeah. I think you were talking about while at work, you might write down certain tasks. And for me, one thing that's helpful there is I a lot of times will be at work and I get really creative. I'll think of videos I want to do. I'll think of song lyrics. I'll think of like music I want to write.
Your heart's going.
Yeah, and I get really excited. And so, but then the thing is, then I get home and I realize I had all this creative energy, but I really think it might help me if I did write down a very specific task. Like, okay, just try to write a song for 50 minutes. Don't worry about complete. Like, I think there might be a balance there in keeping it vague enough that you don't burn yourself out on whatever it is, or give yourself too, you don't.
You have to meet some kind of outline.
Yeah. You want to, but you also do. Yeah, you need a little bit of an outline or a task. But that's interesting to me because I think I think that would help me because I get off work or the next day I'll get up and I'll be like, okay, I was gonna do something with videos today. I guess maybe I'll work on this video. I don't know. I guess I'll do research. Then I'm watching Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah.
And maybe if I'm like, do this, like, here's an idea for a song. Try working that into the song for whatever amount of time.
Right. Yeah. Like I do that for sure. I'll be at work and I'll do a terrible little beatbox voice memo. And then I can take that home and it's not so specific that like, oh, I have a rigid structure, a syllabus almost.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just enough to re-spark that feeling that I had, and then I can get right back into it. And you don't even really need that, I feel like. There's this book I read recently, The War of Art, not The Art of War, but this is by another guy. I think his name is Stephen Pressfield.
Okay.
And he talks about how you just want to show up every day. Like a writer like Stephen King wasn't always writing great stories. He just kind of showed up at the typewriter, and when the creative energy was there, he was physically already set up.
You just got to run with it while you have that.
Right. Yeah. And so I feel like really keeping that consistent rhythm during the work week and not letting it come off kilter on the weekends when you do have that time.
Yeah.
You're not occupied, but you can hype up your energy and then really let that channel. It's so important.
That's kind of interesting. Like the idea, like I wonder if you, and maybe you'd know, but the idea of like, could you biologically train yourself to get into that creative groove?
I think that's what he was saying.
Okay.
It's like you show up every day and then it just kind of starts to work.
Right.
And you're going to
And then
have
you
off
can
days.
almost put yourself into that mood.
But yeah, it becomes a muscle memory. Kind of like shooting free throws.
Yeah.
Very much so.
I mean, it makes sense. There's all kinds of other ways in life where you might instantly be put in a bad mood because of something physical you're doing, or maybe you're interacting with someone you don't like. So I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, you have your body react in a different way like that, where maybe you can get yourself into kind of a creative flow by triggering certain physical things.
Yeah, maybe your morning routine is like having that cup of coffee, and that can make it flow. Like, hopefully at one point you can just pick up whatever your camera or sit down at your desk, and that's all you need to trigger it. It wakes up that muscle memory.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'll get to that point, but it's definitely something that it becomes that sort of it's that same taking the resistance away from it. It just you sit down in the chair and it just kind of flows, and it becomes I think you referenced this a couple days ago, Caleb, flow state.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to think about being focused. Maybe you could explain a flow state a little better than I could. I don't think that I quite grasp the concept.
Before I go into that, before we go too much further, there was two things I wanted to quickly touch on that you guys mentioned. One, I want to come back to it, but there's this concept I've been wrestling with recently. I've gotten really, really efficient in my week. Like, I've got I cook all my own meals now. I work out 5 days a week. Work 8 hours a day during those 5 days, and try to get at least one thing done towards getting into school. And it's gotten to the point where like problems are thrown at me and I have no idea how to solve it. Like, I recently found out I missed a vaccination when I was a kid, and that can prevent me from going to school. And I had no idea how you even go about figuring out where to get a vaccination done. Like, it was one of those things I was completely blind to. And it's gotten to the point where it's like now whenever those problems come, instead of being like, shit, I don't know what to do, it's like, oh yeah, I guess I can just start Googling some vague terms. Pretty soon I'll have an idea of who to call, where to start. But what I've noticed is I use my weekends as like, okay, time to relax. And I've noticed I probably fuck myself over on the weekends because I relax too much. I get like kind of too lazy, and I'm basically having to restart myself every week to get back in that efficiency. It's like one thing I'm trying to learn is how do you get rid of the negative space on the weekends where you're relaxing, rebuilding your energy, but you're also sort of staying in an efficient state, like a flow state, so that you're in a flow state all week.
Yeah.
And just before I get into what a flow state is, there's this idea that I've been like picking at, trying to figure out, that Alan Watts was talking about in one of his lectures, where it's like learning how to play on demand. And that's kind of what you guys were just talking about. Like there's this huge problem of, and it's a philosophical concept in any situation in life. Once you're trying to do something, you can put like a real bind on it where you just can't do it. Like the minute you're trying to be funny, suddenly you can't be funny.
Stage fright.
Yeah.
Classic.
And that clamps up everything. And the way Alan Watts described it, like really made it simple for me, where he was like, if you have your kid and all the relatives come over on Christmas Day and you set the child down in the middle of the living room with them all staring at him and you say, okay, play. The kid, you've suddenly made it impossible for the kid to play. The kid freezes up and has no idea how to do it because you've like demanded it of him.
I feel that was me at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
As soon as I knew we were recording, my voice just got a little shaky. I felt a little twitchier.
Yeah,
it's like
it happens.
standing
Well,
up
it
for a
happens to
solo.
me sometimes too. It's weird because there's no difference between us chatting right before we hit record.
Right, we're in the same
But then
room.
as soon as you do it, what happens to me is I start thinking there's people I don't know probably listening to this, and that's what freaks me out.
But with that, for me at least, like it's gotten where the podcast, I usually don't freeze up. Like it used to be, I usually freeze up and freak out. Now it's I usually don't, and maybe 20% of the time, like I'll get caught up. And there's this idea that as a creative person, you have to learn how to play on demand. Whatever you enjoy doing, you're trying to learn how to do that anytime you're put into like a demand, like, okay, now go write a script. Okay, now go do a song and stuff. And like it seems impossible. You seem like you just need to let me write when I'm ready. You need to let me write when it comes to you. But there's this concept, I'm not super familiar with it, but it's a Japanese concept called like Sabra Hasagawa or something like that, where it's basically creativity is learning how to control an explosion so that the explosion happens exactly when you want it to. And so now that I've went through all the things I wanted to talk about,
a flow state.
A flow state is basically like most people talk about it as like getting in the zone. Like suddenly, like I do it at work. It took me a while to get where I could even think about creative things at work. I had to just practice for like a week because like there's so many new things I'm learning to also have my brain running is kind of hard. But then you get where you start channeling like the right energy to do the right idea. Like you can start thinking about that idea again. You pull open that story that you haven't been able to think about for like a week, and suddenly it's going. And there's this concept of how do you stay in that zone all the time? Like, and you have to really restructure your life around how do I keep myself constantly in flow? And it's something I'm new to, so I can't really explain the hows of it, but
me too.
The basic concept that I've been learning, and there's two guys I listen to a lot about it, which is Jocko Willink. He helps me a lot with learning how to be focused and disciplined. And then somebody who doesn't explain the concepts well, but he's living them, is Akira the Don, that artist that I listen to. Regardless of the music, because it's a weird style of music, what he's been able to do is like restructure his whole life around making music and just learn how to be so efficient at it that he releases an album a month, and he like never thought he could do that. And I think it's something like you take something that you need to do. Like if you just decide one day, I'm going to eat healthy, work out, work on a creative project every day, and be better at my job.
And just make the rule where you can never break those 4 rules, you know?
You're doomed to fail. But you're doomed to fail if you just try and take that on all at once. And the concept is like you were kind of talking about like making coffee like a habit.
Whatever your morning habit, yeah.
Yeah. You have to turn all of these things into habits. So like cooking once a week. took a while for that to be a habit, but now it's like I don't really even think about it. It's like I got to do that. Like it's built-in muscle memory now. And then it's like, okay, I've got to prep all my lunches for the week on this certain day. And you kind of are layering that in, where another concept that people talk about with focus is like the thing that becomes a habit, your brain starts to forget doing it. Your brain kind of fast forwards through your habits. And so if you start to make good things habits, your brain just starts to do them automatically. Like, I mean, there's still a consciousness element to it, but it's like if you make your regular habit getting up in the morning at a certain time, working out, eating at a certain time, and then going and doing something, it gets where 3 weeks into it, your brain just wants to do that to kill time. And pretty soon, like, you layer all these structures on, and pretty much your life like becomes this hyper efficient lifestyle.
Man, and that's
that's pretty vague for an episode on focus, but
oh, not at all. This is what I was hoping for, because I mean, it's so hard to do something linear with 3 different people in a conversation, because it's we all have so many different past experiences. But just leapfrogging to all these concepts, I feel like there's nothing that you led right into the next point I want to take, which is that self-care. With the it kind of relates back to the longevity perspective I was referring to earlier, where maybe you know that eating healthy foods is good for you. You know, people, they've always told you, oh, you should eat healthy because, well, you live longer or whatever. But having the focus, or at least the faith, to know that 2 days later after eating that broccoli, I'm going to feel better. I don't even feel that it's a placebo. If you have the focus to remember, I ate this, and then you realize how you feel the next day, the few days after that, you come to realize that these truths these actions are undeniable truths, that it's going to help you make all of those other goals that you want to incorporate day by day and ease into. It makes all those easier to ease into as well. The thing with the diet, man, I feel like I just lost my train of thought, or where I was trying to lead with that. Oh yeah, yes, with the diet and having energy. You said you were trying to build up energy and not let your weekends dwindle away. Was I think having that exercising maybe on the weekends, and then having an easy day on Thursday and Friday when we're at work, and you're at the end of the week, Thursday and Friday, you've been tapping your reserves. You're already kind of out of energy. And then if you just don't do any physical exercise on Saturday and Sunday, your body is in like this weird, all of a sudden I have no demand. I'm just building up all this. I thought I was going to be working really hard like I was the last 5 days in a row, Yeah. And like trying to make that 7 days, or forget 7 days, just every day ahead of you as consistent as the last day, or maybe slightly better, hopefully, but just not like a giant shock. Thinking about that long run longevity aspect, I think would help with being able to ease into those new goals, or whatever it is that might be holding you back because you don't feel you have the energy.
Yeah, well, and that's a big thing is the feeling you have energy. Like, I started realizing how much the things that I eat were affecting my ability to stay energized. Like, I'd get real lethargic. I'd get where I just wanted to sleep all day. And not like I'm lazy, I want to sleep all day. It's like, God, I want to do stuff, but I'm so tired all the time. I'm taking naps and sleeping a full 8 hours.
I need a coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. The coffee 6 hours later made me more tired than I would have been.
Yeah. And I started pulling back on a lot of things. Like I pulled a lot of carbs out, a lot of sugars out, where now I have like 1 or 2 cups of coffee. Like, it's so easy to be like, fucking health nuts, man. Like, screw those guys and stuff like that. But then once you start doing a little bit of it, you're like, oh, no, I get why people get so driven and so like nutto about this one aspect. Is you start getting your diet and health in order, you feel more energized and you can do more things. But with the weekend thing, what I've realized I've been doing is I change my diet on the weekend. Like, I'm strict on the week because I thought, okay, if I do it on the week, but then hang out, have fun, eat whatever I want on the weekends, I can do better on the weeks. And what I'm realizing is the opposite. I basically like eat junk food and stuff on the weekend sometimes and crash myself out where I'm like, God, I need Monday to come around. Maybe I'll even start exercising and eating right on Sunday because I just need that energy back. And it's like, okay, I guess I need to break through that next level and start eating healthy every day and working out almost every day, like lighten the exercises so I don't like hurt myself and then can't work out a day, but do light exercises every day. And that used to be like, oh, that's going to burn me out. Now it's like, that's how I get to the next step. And then I can be more efficient throughout the week and like accomplish more things.
Yeah, I feel like when you take it easy like that, some people think that you're not pushing yourself as hard as you can. You still got more in the tank. The point is to always have something in the tank, right?
Yeah.
Like those guys who go to the gym and they're like, how many pull-ups can I do? I'm going to do as many pull-ups as I can today. And he gets 20. Like he just pushes it. You know, he has to stop and rest in between every 5, and he's doing one at a time. He gets 20. He can't do those again until Friday, 5 days later.
Yeah.
Where if I'm doing 5 a day, 10 a day, I've exceeded how many he's done by the end of the week, and I'm not tired at all. You know?
Yeah.
It can be one of those things where I hate repeating myself, but it's just so easy if you make it easier on yourself.
Yeah.
Not thinking that you have to give so much more. And it's so hard to, like, this concept that I had kind of actualized recently or realized recently was that your every day becomes exponentially shorter, or at least relatively shorter, because of your lifespan. And I feel like at this age, with societal demands and just how short my context of time is, being 23 years old, that I should just be giving so much more, because I see all these people that role models, guys on the internet. Joe Rogan, classic. This dude's made a ton of money for himself. He has an awesome family, awesome house, a whole studio. He's doing what he wants and he's getting paid for it. And it's like, man, if I just gave more, I'm being lazy. Why am I not already doing what he's doing? But having that maybe having that faith in the system, and then making sure you're not cheating on those weekends can make it, you will probably arrive there sooner than you think, and not out of energy.
There's definitely, and you kind of were saying it earlier about if you just all of a sudden are like, I'm going to change my life around and do all these things all of a sudden. It's like, okay, so you might be good for, well, I guess the best analogy I can make is like, I've always struggled with being addicted to soda. I guess it's probably, maybe it's caffeine, but soda is just the way I intake it. But like, I have tried before quit cold turkey soda, and it'll work if I'm lucky, maybe sometimes for about a week. And then I'll get headaches or whatever happens when you don't drink enough soda. And then then it's like, I guess I could just grab like one of those 1 liters from the store, and that'll just be it for now. And then pretty soon I have a 12-pack back in the fridge the next week. Yeah. But the times where it's worked really well for me has been, okay, I can only drink 1 soda today. That's it. 1 soda. And then it's like, okay, now it's like, anytime I drink a soda, I have to drink 2 bottles of water or something like that. Not all at once, but that's just how it goes out. And then pretty soon go, okay, I can only drink soda if I'm out eating somewhere. If I go out to eat, then I'll have a soda. And it's like, now that happens over the course of the week, and you can sustain that. It's like, look, drinking soda when you go out to restaurants isn't as good as not drinking soda at all, but it's way better than drinking 3 packs of soda or 3 cans of soda every day.
And it's such an easier requirement to meet, because if you think I can never drink another soda, and then you crack, and you've been holding all this weight, and then you go, well, I can't. I already drank 1 soda. I might as well just go back to drink it. That's my thing again.
Exactly.
I'm the soda drinker.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Right. Yeah. So and that's the thing. You end up cracking, and then it's like you're doing worse in the long run by trying to take on too much at the same time. So I think and that kind of goes with anything that you take too much on, or even like wanting to, with anything you're doing and however you're focusing on it. I do think or even if you're like, man, I just want to be rich like Joe Rogan. I wish I had his studio, and I wish I could do whatever I want that way. It's like, you also have to realize Joe Rogan started off making no money trying to do open mic gigs, right? And then, I mean, there's always a little bit of luck here and there, but like, I always remind myself of those things, and it gets me motivated because it makes me think, I don't need to be there right now, but I do need to figure out what things I can put in place to be there at some point.
Yeah.
And just go like, what's the next good thing for me? Maybe it's I'm not drinking soda anymore and I've written a song every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, that's not owning my own, studio with a badass werewolf statue in it, but it's pretty cool. And eventually you keep doing that. And then it gets to the point where the next step is, I think I can expand my studio. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and with the whole soda thing, what's interesting about that is if you go the route that you're going, where you're leaving yourself room to do those things, it's like eventually you might get to the point where you're like, I don't really want soda at the restaurant. I'm just going to order a water.
Exactly.
And then pretty soon you get to a point where you're not drinking soda at all. But it's kind of that bind thing. If you would put that pressure on yourself, I can never drink soda. And I also like when religion gets involved, like I think that's the whole thing with all these like sins you got to get out of your life. Why people in church never actually get out of any of their problems is it's always like, you got to stop doing this. You got to stop fornicating. You got to stop smoking. You can't be a gay. Like you can't do any of these things. Gay one's a joke. You got to do all this. And it's like, those people are constantly living with pressure all the time and they can't do anything with it. But the concept that we're all talking about is that incremental improvement thing. And that incremental improvement, like I heard Jordan Peterson talk about it like 2 years ago when I started this whole process. And it was like, I get what you're saying. I get basic mathematics, but I don't see how me deciding today to clean up my room is going to get me anywhere in the future. But then it's only been 1 year and it's like, I never thought I never thought I would care to eat healthy. I never thought I would be running this podcast as consistently as we have been running it, or putting in the extra work to try and like advertise and do those kinds of things. Like I definitely never thought I would get accepted into film school, and I didn't get to any of those things like trying to take on one big thing at a time. It was like, okay, I'm gonna try and do this thing better, and then I'm gonna do this thing better. And pretty soon all those things, like they layer and they get easier to do and they become muscle memory. And then you're like, look back and you're like, oh, holy shit, I'm working out 5 days a week. Like I never thought I could do that.
Then that one soda becomes, oh, I didn't realize how much this is balanced at doing what I've worked myself into doing and how much that one soda can throw me off,
Yeah. All of a sudden it goes from being like your relief to being like, God, this thing kicks my ass. I don't want to do this anymore. Well, me and Matt talk a lot about being sick and not knowing it. Like whenever you get out of a certain bad habit, you don't necessarily feel much different. You maybe feel a little bit more energized, but then you do that thing again, like you eat a bunch of donuts or something, and you go, holy shit, this is what I felt like the last 4 years. No wonder I didn't want to do anything. Like I feel sick. I feel super depressed, lethargic. Like I can't even think right now. It's like I ate like a shit ton of sugar.
It's like sitting in a tank of ice water and slowly pulling yourself out and then strolling along the beach. And then you dip just your toes back into the ice water and you're like, what the fuck? That's so cold.
Why was I doing it? Yeah. Yeah. So I think maybe that's why there's so many things where people don't ever improve their lives, is like you can't realize you were feeling bad until you start to feel good.
Yeah definitely. That can I feel like that can be a feedback loop with strangers in a way that you see these other these people that may be living a good lifestyle, but their image or whatever you observe that sticks out the most, you don't relate with that. You don't resonate with them wearing sandals or being vegan, and like you almost brush off the things that they're doing that are helping them because it associates with that certain type of thing,
Sure.
Yeah.
And the thing with strangers and relationships is that they're not really if you're giving yourself the opportunity for the future, they're not a stranger at all. That could be a friend that could help your mood or help develop a certain step in your process of a product, or whatever it might be. And if you're in that low vibration state where your brain isn't broccoli, your brain is Coca-Cola, then all you're thinking is like, you're not giving me Coca-Cola in this interaction. You're not thinking of you're thinking, I want Coke from this interaction. Like I want sex, or you wouldn't need to laugh at my jokes or whatever it is. You know? Whereas having that like broccoli brain, you can think of like, hey man, you could definitely like, we could help each other, you know?
Yeah.
Can we make a Verse the World t-shirt that says be a broccoli brain? And it's a picture of your face and your head's kind of partially like broccoli.
Legitimately, the
Only
way
if I get
the way
paid for it.
Oh, we'll give you 10 cents a shirt.
the way
great.
Zane talks sometimes, like he's constantly coining phrases without even trying it. Like a lot of what you say can be on t-shirts.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just repeating things with a terrible delivery.
Yeah.
Things that
So
are
it's
conventional.
memorable?
That would be the secret. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Like, those are two new ideas like I had never thought about before. Like the idea that like, oh, I might brush off this person who's like a vegan. Their life is like 10 times better than mine. But the one thing that I think they do that is stupid, like I write off
They
the whole
listen
person.
to bluegrass. I
Yeah.
could never do that. I could never do anything they do.
Well, legitimately, one time, like, I think I could say this on the pod. One time I went on a date with a girl, and I was like trying to convince myself that I didn't want to be on this date with this girl, even though I did. And like, she was a pretty, like, she was probably an 8 out of 10, like pretty solid girl. And as soon as she was like, oh, I listen to country all the time, I was like, boom, I have my excuse to not want to ever talk to this girl again. And just like, it's that what you were just saying. It's like, you're not giving me, like, I've written out a very specific list of things I want in my life in my head, and you're not giving me that. So I'm going to write you off right now. Yeah. And like looking back on that, it was like, that not only was a great opportunity for a great friendship, because that was a great person, but also like it could have ended up being like, it could have rewrote what I was looking for in a relationship and helped me develop a better image of what a relationship could be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also the potential there for you also don't, there's a closed-mindedness about being like, this person's subjective interests have to fall into sort of my subjective interest in a certain way. Like, because it could be something like you end up talking to the girl and she goes, oh, like you don't like country, but like, have you listened to this and that? And then you go, oh, that's actually kind of cool. What is that? And you might even learn more about something that you don't know about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I mean, I've literally had very similar instances where it's like, oh, you're into that thing, like,
and then you get into it a month later and forget they showed you first. You're like, maybe you show it to them. You're like, man, check out this cool song.
And then
like,
Caleb tries to take me on a
hate
date, and I tell him I like country music, and, and then we do a podcast together.
Hey, is that how we met?
I do hate that though. Like, that's something I have to be like, okay, don't get pissed off when someone's like, no, I hate this thing. Like, I hate violence in movies. Violence in movies is just always awful. And you're like, yeah, but have you watched this movie that has this incredible story? Violence is the vehicle by which you get there, and you wouldn't feel the same emotions if it wasn't violent. And then they watch it and they're like, yeah, that wasn't too bad. I'm actually like, I'm kind of touched by it. And then you see them like 3 months later and they're watching some HBO and shit. Like they have all the tolerance for violence, and they're just like, oh yeah, like I'm a huge fan of all this. And you're just like, you literally fought you wanted your life to never watch violence.
I think what's hard about that with people in those instances, they like country or they like something you don't like, is you have to think of it from both perspectives. And it's easy to be like, because that's the other way around, right? Someone doesn't like violent movies or something, and you do, and they see that you like I like horror movies, like 80s horror movies, and there's definitely people who hate horror movies. And so that's probably a thing, right? You're on a date, it's like, yeah, I love horror, it's a big part of my life, not going to talk to this guy again. It's like, I think the key is to treat the other person the way you would want to be. It's the golden rule thing, but treat them how you would want to be treated either side of the situation. Even though it's tempting to be like, well, if someone treated me that way, then I'll do it the other way. But I think it's like, someone's not into violence, and you are just like, oh, yeah, I get that. Like I'm like that. Maybe that's my thing. And then the other way around, be like, oh, you're into country music. Like, well, what's that all about? And I think, but maybe that's selfish because you're looking at how you can get the best interaction out of that in a way. Because that's more on your improvement. But I think I always just say that's the best way to handle it with situations like that, is to just
No, I don't think I'm the only one who's come into this situation, but do you guys think of a time when you cared about someone enough to endure an activity that you didn't enjoy just to hang out with this person? You know, maybe you went to go see that movie, that whatever it was, but you knew that it wouldn't spike your emotional state. You know, you wouldn't be,
Yeah.
in some version of ecstasy, because you might be actually in a dip from where you were before you went into the movie. And when you kind of recognize the person as that common factor that's been there before and after the movie, you know, like, I felt different, but this person's been here the whole time.
Yeah.
It really it kind of circles back to that that looking for the long-term positivity thing, where sometimes you find yourself, when I was in high school, I found myself hanging out with people that I had nothing in common with, just because I thought that it would, you know, make me feel better, or someone would see me and think I was cool, and that would make me feel better, you know?
Yeah.
Where it wasn't one of those long-lasting relationships where, oh, you hang out with them, and maybe I'm like, yeah, I'm proud to hang out. You know, they've pushed me to do this. Like, this person has been a commonality that has put me through maybe a shame that has helped me grow, you know? Maybe they've made me feel worse, but because I was able to realize what I was maybe making harder on myself, I was able to forgive them, or not even hold it against them at all, and let the relationship come above that state change. It's funny when you look at your relationships over time, especially, you realize that a lot of those are it's a form of state change. Like, I love hanging out with people who can make me laugh. You know, like, I've been in all kinds of different jobs where, you know, maybe this dude is better at what he does, or like in school, this guy's better at what but if I don't get along with them, it's that kind of cancels the whole thing, you know? Where if, say, like, this person's not even the best at what they do, or they enjoy things that I'm not as into, if I enjoy being with that person, it's such a healthier relationship in the long run. And I feel like your mood will actually be better being around this person.
Yeah.
It's kind of vague, but I think I started it with, do you guys think of a time where being around that kind of person, you know, what you were doing might not have been your favorite activity, but this person maybe made an impact on you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my best friends is, his whole life is centered around cars. And I'm not a car guy. I just don't care much for loud cars and stuff. And he like does street races and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And if you just picked both of us out and hung out with us separately, we'd be like the opposite people you expect to hang out with. And we hung out all through high school. We still meet up now and again and like hang out, and it's just like old times. And mostly it's because there's some kind of sense of humor we have that locks. But like you said about the state changes, if I'm around that guy, I'm kind of a better version of myself, in the sense that I am way less serious. And all of a sudden I'm a lot more like goofy. And I kind of need that sometimes, because I can get a little too serious. And so when I'm around some people that can make me like just feel like a goofball, and I don't have to be serious around them, I don't have to be like philosophical or political or anything.
Never make a mistake.
It's a big, it's a big relief. So I definitely can relate to that on some levels.
I mean, I have situations like that, but I can't think of a really good example where the other person is that for me. But what I can think about is like situations where I can tell clearly I'm that for the other person. One of my best buds, who's new, because I kind of think about people that way. Like, there's best buds who've always been there and always are going to be there, and then there's best buds who are new, and you're still waiting to see where things are going to go, whether this is going to be a lifelong friendship or one of those things that really impacts your life positively, and then it's not there anymore, and that's not a bad thing. But one of my friends, when we first started hanging out, we probably did not have a single thing in common that we can, like, we struggle when we hang out to find something to do together. Like, to this day, we can rarely find, like, let's do this together and we're both going to enjoy it. It's almost always, you want to do that? I'm going to do it with you, and I'm bored out of my mind, or I wish this would end. But he does that with me too. And so it's like, that's almost all our interaction. I can't figure out why he decided he wanted to start hanging out with me. But I know from the way he's talked about it and stuff that it's just that, like, he was aware that we had no commonality when we started hanging out, but he was attracted to the fact that in hanging out with me, he could laugh, relax, like, take things easy, and just have fun. And he just did not care at all. And he's somebody who's usually, it's like, if you don't agree with me on a lot of things, we're not going to get along.
Oh, I'm the same way, man. I'm trying to get so much better, but
It's hard, right?
that's me, man.
Dude, but he's like really a stickler for that. It's like you say about 3 things that are complete opposites to what he thinks, and he can pretty much write you off as a person and never talk to you again. And it's like, how many things have I said that he absolutely disagrees with, but he just keeps coming back?
Yeah.
And that's one friendship that I really, really value. But it's interesting to think about it from that perspective.
It seems like a muscle that you train almost, where things that come easily, like since a kid, I've always loved sugar. Like that comes really easily. But then you look at some of the chemical reactions it has in your body and you realize that it's not very far off from heroin, you know?
Yeah.
It's just killing your heart. It's killing your blood sugar. It's just no good for you. But if you can train that muscle to appreciate like a certain spice or just raw broccoli, then it's not even like training a muscle at a certain point. It's like that becomes just your choice, you know?
Yeah. And to some extent, with that illustration, that's really interesting because me and Matt talk about this sometime. I don't know if we're too off track from focus at this point now, but it's like, how much do you force yourself to learn to like something? Like, because that's a concern, right? If you're forcing yourself to like something, then can you force yourself to like anything, even if it's super unhealthy for you?
Oh, yeah.
But I kind of have this thought. It's really, really low resolution. I don't really know what I think about my thought yet. But it's this concept that like, there's certain things your body is supposed to like and are good for you, and there's also experiences that are good for you that regulate your life over time. But you have such an access when you're born into this world, especially being born into the age that we were born into. You have such an access to things that like immediately cut through all of your neurological wiring and everything to just make you feel like an intense sense of pleasure. Like sugar just absolutely makes you feel good from the moment you're born. You're even as a kid, like your body is looking for more sugar. There's all those kinds of things. But then if you train it to appreciate things your body actually needs, I question whether it's training yourself to like something or if it's cutting enough of the cheating out, like the drugging yourself out to actually start to let your body call out to what it's like actually looking for.
And when you are kind of on that comfort giving drug, anything that's like below that level of comfort seems like the biggest inconvenience. You know, it's just, why me? You know, you're always thinking that. But this is funny. I heard this on a Rogan podcast recently, where he says he likes to choose his either suffering or his hell. He really made it a bit dramatic, but he likes to choose his suffering so that after like a crazy workout, anything he does for the rest of that day is really easy. It's like he's compressed to such a point that he feels just steadier throughout the day, from what I understand.
I've heard him talk about that. I don't know if it was the same podcast, but I've heard him talk about that concept a couple times about he makes himself work out so hard so that it's so brutal and so tough that just everything else there's not a challenge, right? Like he's not as anxious about anything,
right?
And I'm like, that's it. That is an interesting idea, but because he was talking specifically about workout, which it makes sense. I don't know what other context you can build your own hell that makes sense. You know, I guess if you practice an instrument, you could.
Well, maybe that's kind of the idea, the Marcus Aurelius idea of like when you get up in the morning, you project out every horrible thing that could happen to you. One thing, like I started actually writing down, I realized the Meditations is probably a horrible book to just read and put down. Like you should take it one meditation at a time and think about it. And so I started writing one down before I go to work every day. And one of them, like the first one in part 2 is like, sit down and think to yourself, I will meet with the arrogant, the envious, the unsociable, all these different horrible people today. And they're that way. And I perceive them that way because I'm aware of good and evil and how beautiful good is and how ugly evil is. And them being unaware of it, that's why they're partaking in it. So they shouldn't cause you any harm. And so I don't know if that's the same concept, but sitting there and like imagining all this horrible shit happening to you and like how everything could go wrong for me does kind of then alleviate most of the pressures throughout the day. It's only the unexpected things then that can throw me off my game.
And maybe that those things that you're imagining are actually happening to you. Like it could be You could really be going through some shit, you know, and like people do. But I find that the more stuff that you do that's unfamiliar to you, that is uncomfortable as well, you can kind of recruit that as like a tactic to overcome. Like to ground this in something that I've been focusing on recently would be like playing a jazz solo. People think you just stand up and like it just flows through you, man. It's just the Holy Spirit, and I got soul, you know. But really, that guy has spent, like Charlie Parker, great example, in an interview talks about a 4-year period he was practicing 10 to 16 hours a day, and so like he's got all this stuff under his belt that at that point it really can flow through him because he's done all this uncomfortable memorization, whatever it is. He's got this new vocabulary, like Eminem reading through the dictionary. If he really did it, I mean, he's got so many words to call upon in a real context now. He's not forcing anything, but it's so unique from stuff you've heard before.
Yeah. Well, and like even in film, like Quentin Tarantino is basically that as well. Like his whole directing style is basically recreating all the stuff he loved from other movies because he watched like thousands of other movies. So he rarely, even if you don't like one or two of his movies, he's never made a bad movie, and he's also never made a bad scene in a movie. Like you can't really sit there and think, yeah, that one scene in that Tarantino movie, that was really poorly shot, that was ass. Because he knows how every scene of every movie where two people talk in a car was framed, and then he's subconsciously pulling out
there's a self-awareness, because I try to do this with people, which is weird, but I do think there's like that Peterson rule, which is really good, which is don't compare yourself to other people. And I think that's true. You compare yourself to a past version of yourself. But the only times I don't actually compare myself to other people, but I try to learn from other people's mistakes. So I watch people, and if you just constantly are watching people and recognizing things, like, that person has a little bit of a lack of self-awareness on this thing. Or anytime someone does something I don't like, another person, like that was a little annoying, or this guy was insulting, or that, I stop and try to identify where that's at in myself, and then correct it. I know I went in a crazy kind of different path, but it's that idea you're saying with Tarantino where it's like, because he knows all this knowledge, but it's not just he knows all this knowledge so he knows how to make a good scene. He knows what a bad scene is too, and he's avoiding the bad scene. Yeah.
It's kind of like in the one of the first things they test you on in an IQ test is a Rorschach test. And just the more you've been experienced to, the more you can see in something that's that may not actually exist yet. You know, like a marble statue. I've never carved before, but apparently Michelangelo sees what he just removes what shouldn't be there and exposes the statue within. You know, and it's that. I went through the Michelangelo Museum, and the first couple hallways is just trash. It looks like high school, failed projects out of, honestly, clay. It's just lumpy and terrible, fractured. But then you see he's just done it from so many angles, so many different like poses or sizes, whatever it is, that you arrive at the David at the end, and it's just so magnificent.
But I kind of like the idea where he's removing what's already there. So he's like removing, like in his early days, he's like, he's like, this looks like shit. I guess I'll get another pillar and see what's in that one. Yeah. It's like, anyway, a little joke,
but yeah, with just before we move on to the next thing, like the whole concept of like bringing yourself down and like getting yourself out of that drugged up state. One thing that was weird, I've really been noticing, I eat a lot of bananas now. Because my body wouldn't let me eat bananas before. I did a reduction diet for a completely different reason. Than one day I was like, I probably have a potassium deficiency. I should force myself to eat a banana. And all of a sudden I can eat bananas and there's no problem. But one of the interesting things is I have so little sugar in the day now. Like I have honey with my coffee and I have 2 cups of coffee. And outside of that, it's pretty much whatever sugar is sneaked into the food I'm eating. Like I'm not eating sugary foods. Like I had a cookie today. That's a super rare occurrence. When I eat a banana now, like especially if it's been in the fridge at work and I like go to eat it, sometimes it like kicks my ass how sweet it is. Like it tastes like it's like I used to make that absolutely bomb ass banana cereal where you just cut up a banana into slices, put some sugar on it and eat it.
Oh yeah.
if you never try to do it. But now it tastes like there's already sugar on my banana. Like my banana's just like been soaked in sugar. And it's like, well then fuck dog, if I can do it eating a banana, why didn't somebody tell me this a long time ago? And it's kind of that drug thing. It's like you want to feel really good, but if you can get off the drug and the little things in life start to like resonate more for you,
Yeah.
it's like, fuck it, man. I don't need a drug to get there. I just enjoy watching Trailer Park Boys, and that gives me the same high.
And shutting off the TV lets like that rattling echo just kind of die out a little bit, so that when you're watching something less you're eating something less stimulating, you've reset your palate. You know, like you eat raw broccoli long enough, those bananas become sweet. You stop watching Netflix long enough. My friend is showing me this stuff called experimental film, where like whatever I just discovered this stuff.
Oh really?
And he says there's well, first he showed me a video, didn't say anything, it made no sense, and like there's all kinds of, you know, physics acting weird and supernatural stuff, and I just don't understand this. But then he says like the point is there's no plot, it's supposed to hit a reaction that maybe you've never felt before, you know. It's like it
sounds like modern art a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm suspicious.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm referencing like a popular film at all, but it's it definitely, it's like relating to the food or your focus, you know. It's like putting yourself through that mud a little bit kind of does make the banana sweeter, you know. And then all of a sudden like, hey, I didn't know I liked bell peppers. I thought they were just flavorless, you know. I didn't know I liked this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're actually pretty good ASMR voice, I think.
I'm not sure about that.
You're putting me into a meditative state.
Thank you.
Just been talking.
I'm glad. I hope that I can calm others and release my tension that way.
What's our runtime, by the way?
Did you have more topics you wanted to hit before you go? Like I think we've hit some pretty good stuff already, but
I mean,
if there's
obviously
other things you want to hit
we'll
sure.
probably do another episode in the
Yeah,
future.
I think we'll definitely
I imagine in the future. I enjoy talking with you guys.
For sure.
Yeah.
I've said this to you on a couple occasions, Caleb, that you're just like, you're an intelligent guy and easy to talk to, you man, and it flows out. But like Matt, man, like I feel really comfortable around you, that like you're an insightful dude and you don't force it down people's throats, you know. Like I almost feel like I got to open you up a little bit just to like hear some of like I like what you have to say, but I also appreciate that you're not like running around trying to jam it down people's throats, you know?
Right. Well, I appreciate that.
Something you don't find all the time now.
Thanks, man. That was a really great compliment. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, a little sappiness at the end after criticizing all the stuff the society's been doing.
Yeah.
Well, man, I've really enjoyed like at work and stuff. Like once I saw you there training, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of know Zane. I can spitball with him. Like that's one connection here. And then I was like, man, I'm gonna have to force myself to talk to somebody else because Zane's just a cool dude, and he's always got like an interesting thing in his mind.
It's always more depth to it, for sure.
Right. I don't think I've had an interaction with you where it wasn't some kind of interesting conversation. Man. Or sometimes it'll just be 2 minutes while we're walking up into the building, and I'll say something really generic small talk, and you'll somehow like kind of tilt your head a certain way and say it kind of, and you'll say it and you'll somehow rephrase what I said into something like philosophical, and then I'm gonna be thinking about it the next 10 minutes at work. I'm like, dang, dude, I was trying to do small talk. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, there's always another layer to everything, man, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, is this a good time for me to do a shameless plug?
Absolutely, man. Go for it.
Awesome. So everybody out there, I'm Zane Richter. I'm doing music, so you can check out my SoundCloud. I'm also on Instagram and Snapchat. That's Slim Daddy Z, because I'm a slim guy.
Yeah.
I'm usually
a daddy.
We're working on that one, but not happening. But also I'm uploading on Snapchat. If I'm doing any live events, you'll see it there. I might be promoting on Facebook and Instagram as well. Check me out.
Slim Daddy Z. I'm gonna try and put a couple links in the Podbean episode description for you guys. So if you want to check those out, at least for your SoundCloud.
That sounds great.
Yeah. All right, man. Before we wrap up the topic, any last thoughts on focus?
It's all up to you, honestly. You, the viewer. You can watch the world burn up around you, or you can really seize it and do better for yourself.
Getting chills.
Matt, did you have any final thoughts before we move on and wrap it up?
None that I can articulate well, but I will say a couple of little things that you said, like even just, you know, I don't know, it's refreshing the perspective. So I'm probably going to apply a couple things from this conversation, I think.
Yeah, man. If you're in school, I want to just one more thing before we close.
Yeah.
Take the time to read something you want to read. You'll be surprised the attention and the love that you have for things as mundane as reading can expand for yourself. They got you reading so much stuff. Think about how many pages and chapters you're reading every day in class, and just take even half that much for yourself.
Yeah. One thing you said really early in the show that I never got to hit on, last thing I really want to talk about is you kind of put it as instead of trying to get everything you want done in a day, get rid of the space that you're wasting, and then kind of see how much more you get done. And I really think that's a concept I'm starting to see in more and more areas in life. Like Peterson, one of his rules that helped me is like, you kind of always have people telling you to tell the truth and like shoving it down your throat. And it's like, yeah, I get it, but it's so easy to lie. And it's so immediately beneficial to lie, but it screws you up in the long term. He kind of laid out a good argument, but then his rule is at least don't lie. Like he makes it really simple for you. He's like, don't, and he even tells you like, don't start trying to tell the truth first. You don't have the right to do that. You don't even know how to do it. Just start catching yourself when you're saying things you know aren't true or honest about what your experience is, and just start cutting that out of your life. And pretty soon you're telling the truth. Yeah. And you're being genuine, you're being honest with people. And I really think like that's the best approach to any problem you have in life. If you're struggling with anything, if you're inefficient, you can't get your life together, just start trying to tackle the places where you're not doing anything, where you're being lazy.
It's like a beautiful thing when you shine a light on it, because at that point you stop doing the things that you're embarrassed about and stop feeling the need to lie about it.
That seems to be kind of the central thing we kept touching on that was interesting is you don't look at the, like it is that Michelangelo thing. It's like you're chipping away at the stuff that's not supposed to be there, instead of just automatically looking at the end result. It's like you're almost focused on what shouldn't be there as opposed to what should, and that's actually a lot easier way to approach it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Really thanks for coming on, man. I hope we can have you on a few more times before we move out, because you're great. You're a great guest.
We'll see what the future has in store.
Okay. So, Matt, you didn't have any new things you want to complain about in your life?
No, I'm very zen. I think Zane mellowed me out, and I'm too zen to complain about anything.
I don't really have much to say, but just for the sake of consistency, I did talk last week. I said that I finished the Gulag, right?
I think so. Yeah.
If I didn't, I finished the Gulag, and that's definitely a book where I like a book where when you're done with it and you step back, you know you're not going to live your life the same way as when you started reading the book. There's something nice about being able to observe that. But I just started The Last Temptation of Christ, which I'm obsessed with that movie. That book is incredibly well written, like in a weird imagistic poetry kind of way. And I'm like eight or nine chapters in, and it's just a super fascinating, like super well written little book. So that's something I'm really enjoying right now. And I went and saw Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I love that movie so much, and I hate that movie so much, and I want to beat up the director. But you should go see it. If you like action, you like monsters fighting, you should definitely go see it.
Weirdest review of a movie ever.
I've really been thinking about that movie nonstop since we left. It's like I really don't have a beef with it.
It's a good movie then.
Except that it just there were so many of those places where if you chipped away a little bit more, it would have shined so much brighter. And I think that's more and more what upsets me about movies. Yeah. I do complain a lot about movies, but it's so nice. It's not like nothing's ever good enough for me. But when you go see a movie like Into the Spider-Verse, there's almost no scene, dialogue, anything that sticks out as like, ooh, that was rough or that was bad. That movie shines so much that you're like attracted to it to watch it multiple times. And it's rough then to go see a movie that's like really kind of just rough, unfocused, like misshapen a little bit.
Yeah. It almost spoils you when you see something like Into the Spider-Verse.
Something just so good. So good. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this week. Thanks for everybody for listening. Oh shoot, I don't have my list.
Versus the World Pod on Instagram.
versustheworldpod@gmail.com if you want to get in contact with us. We had a great fan send an absolutely wonderful response to our Catholicism episode,
Which we will touch on next podcast.
We will touch on next podcast. We need a little bit more time to read through all of his points, but we definitely want to bring that up. And if you have any points you want to bring up, topic suggestions, anything like that you want to send to us, you can do it through our Gmail. And you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, and Podbean, all at Versus the World.
And probably by now that you'd be listening to this, the last couple podcasts and this one will be on YouTube, where you can actually watch video. So you'll actually see us talk. I don't know how interesting that'll be, but it'll be there for your viewing pleasure.
You can see the back of my head the whole time while I'm staring into Zane's beautiful eyes. Yeah, and that's on YouTube at Versus the World. You'll probably have to find it through our Facebook or something like that. It's a little hard to find right now. We need to get a few more subscribers so it starts popping up.
Yeah.
Haven't put a lot of work into that one. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to Eric for doing all the excellent sound editing and video work and all that. Absolutely great, man. And we'll see you next week, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.